Steelers Nation, thank you so very much for stopping by to the channel on another episode of the Steelers Culture Podcast, where we break down Pittsburgh Steelers football. Today's topic, today's subject, ladies and gentlemen, is discussing probably the most realistic pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round, particularly at pick 21, and that is Oregon defensive lineman Derrick Harmon.
Yes, Derrick Harmon, the big man out of Oregon, and a man that the Steelers have shown heavy interest in, as they not only met him at the Combine, but obviously brought him in for a top 30 visit. So the interest is truly there for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And yes, they didn't send the house to the Oregon Pro Day, and neither did they do that for Troy Futanu last year coming out of Washington. They sent Pat Meyer, who is still the Steelers' O-line coach, to his Pro Day, and they brought him in for a top 30 visit 10 days prior to the first round, and they still selected him in the first round. So same story here with Derrick Harmon, and they did send a scout, Kelvin Fisher, to his Pro Day, who they also sent him to the Colorado Pro Day. Just so happens to host Shedeur Sanders, who I know a lot of people are getting their hopes up that he could potentially fall to 21, or the Steelers might trade up for. That might be hope and dreams. There could be a realistic possibility of that happening. Time will tell. That's why next Thursday is going to be a very interesting time for all of Steelers Nation. But when we look at the first round and pick 21, I look at Derrick Harmon. We have been very, very adamant about going defensive line in the first round because the Steelers cut Larry Ogunjobi, and they have absolutely no one to step in as a 3-tech or as the nose. They have no one to step in his spot right now. They have a legitimate starting hole in that defensive line group with an aging Cam Heyward and a Keanu Benton. And you got to think, they got to get younger. They got to get more interior push. They got to stop the run. And you do got to plan for life after Cameron Heyward. And there is one guy in particular in the first round that fits all that for the Steelers at the defensive line position, and that is Derrick Harmon. What intrigues me the most about the defensive line position in the first round for the Steelers is I thought they'd show a lot more interest in certain other prospects, such as a Kenneth Grant out of Michigan or a Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. They didn't bring any of those guys in for a top 30 visit.
No, they didn't. They brought in a plethora of defensive linemen. They brought in 8 defensive linemen for top 30 visits. So the interest for sure is there. They will address defensive line, and I'm a firm believer in all signs pointing to 21, pick 21 being the selection and the first round being where they select defensive line. And you look at the defensive lineman that they brought in for top 30 visits. Derrick Harmon is the surefire first round player, the only surefire first-round player amongst that list. So, again, the interest is truly there for the Steelers. And when you watch Derrick Harmon, you see how Derrick Harmon plays, it's not hard to see why.
It's very reminiscent of, what's his name? Number 97 for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I don't know. I mean, legendary career, maybe.
Coming out of the Ohio State.
Yeah.
Cam Heyward,
bro.
Just a little bit, except maybe 20 pounds heavier and just a little faster.
Or just as fast, arguably.
I do see a mini Cam Heyward out of Derrick Harmon, man. It's not hard to watch his film and see, wow, that's like prime Cameron Heyward, or even last year's Cameron Heyward, man. It's just, you think about, we need to fulfill that position. We need to think about life after Cameron Heyward. You get a guy very similar, someone that is explosive off the line, someone with quick, violent hands, quick footwork, interior pressure, 43. Yes, I said 43 hurries last year in his lone season at Oregon.
Yeah, his lone season, but boy, did he leave an impact. Like that for Oregon, for the Oregon Ducks.
I mean, in particular, 45 combined tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 43 hurries, 5 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 4 passes defended, and 2 forced fumbles. This guy's a disruptor at the line.
I mean, he's just meant for the trenches. He's a true disruptor at the line of scrimmage right there. I mean, and you look at this defensive line draft class, I mean, there's a lot of high-motored players, but I feel like that this guy might have the highest motor amongst all of them.
I agree.
I would make that argument. I mean, like, when you see the tape and you see when he's out there, I mean, like, he has a high motor and he is just intense. He's disruptive. He has a lot of tenacity to his game. He's fantastic as a pass rusher and just more than capable at stopping the run.
And I think he's probably the more well-rounded defensive lineman when it comes to the Steelers' options in the first round. Is he can get that interior push, which we need to get back to. Last year's defense was so incredibly basic. They did a lot of 4-man rushes. They didn't do too many blitz packages, not as much as we would all like to see. So they really like to win a lot with the 4-man rushes with Highsmith and Watt on the edge and then Ogunjobi and Heyward, or Ogunjobi and Benton, or Benton and Heyward last year. Now, you need that interior push because we didn't have that when we ran a lot of the four-man rush. It didn't help that the defense was so incredibly predictable and everyone was in the same spot and stationary.
Same old, same old.
We need that interior push, man. We need some youth. We need some speed. We need some violence there.
And you mentioned youth. This man is only 21 years old.
Yeah.
And he's already this good.
Yeah.
And he's got a long career way ahead of him with just how talented he is, with so much upside, so much potential already.
Right.
21 years old. I mean, that's right there already getting the defensive line much more younger. You're adding his size, which he is 6'4", 313 pounds.
Yeah.
That's a big boy right there.
That's a big body, and that's perfect for a 3-4 scheme where he could initially start as the nose. He's a little bigger than Keanu Benton, so if you want to push Benton over to 3-tech where he should have been and where he should be for the future, you could move him at 3-tech initially and put Derrick Harmon in on early rundowns as the nose to get his feet wet on that defensive line. Or if you feel very confident that he's all ready to go and he's the day one disruptor you need on that defensive line, which I think he is, you can keep Benton at nose where he's been playing the last 2 years, and then you can put Harmon right opposite of Heyward at the 3-tech.
I think that just goes to show that you can put Derrick Harmon anywhere amongst the defensive line, and he's just going to ball. He's going to be a disruptor. He can play the 1-tech, he can play the 3-tech, he can play anywhere amongst that defensive line.
Yeah, and I love the versatility that he offers on the line, along with the Keanu Benton. I think for the future, you could look at a defensive line group of, and this is when Heyward retires, whether that's after this season or the season after that, whenever he retires, you could be looking at a defensive line group of Benton, who will be years beyond where he's at now, and Harmon leading the charge at that defensive line, man. You got two great interior rushers with that ferociousness on the snap of the football. You got those two young studs that could lead the charge for the next couple of years, but already being mentored by a guy like Heyward come year one for a guy like Harmon, I think that's a great add for this defense. I think that would be a home run selection in the first round for the Steelers, where that is being stationary at pick 21 and taking him with that pick. He could arguably be a best player available selection, or if the Steelers are very confident that he could still be there with a trade back option, that'd be even better because they could trade back, get extra picks, and still get a home run option and a guy like Derrick Harmon.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with either. If the Steelers were to stay at 21 and select Harmon, I couldn't blame them one bit because Harmon is this good.
Yeah, he is.
And you know, just what we were talking about, you know, how he is as a pass rusher, as a run stuffer, and how versatile he is. He literally plays like a Steeler. You watch how he is on that field, and considering, you know, like he's very reminiscent of Cam Heyward, I mean, like, it's just a perfect puzzle piece.
And you
It'd
know,
be like a match made in heaven, just right there and then.
And you notice with his tape, man, is like we've been stating, he's quick, he's ferocious, he's in the backfield like that. He's always disrupting the pocket, disrupting the line of scrimmage, filling the gaps, beating his guy, getting to the quarterback. There are some instances where you watch his film and he gets a little too excited. Maybe he's playing a little too fast, if that makes any sense, where he doesn't finish plays and he doesn't finish sacks and he doesn't finish tackles. I think that'll come with time. But you see, like, that's what we need on that line is we need that disruption. We need that immediate impact. We need that pressure as quick as he makes it happen. That's what we need back on the defensive line, man. We need to get younger, we need to get faster, and we need to get into that pocket. We need to disrupt that pocket as quick as we can. And Harmon, very intense, very quick player on the line.
Yeah, Harmon, he's not the perfect player by any means. You know, he's still got some stuff to work on. Again, he's 21, he's very young, but that'll come with, you know, playing experience. That'll come over time, especially learning from a guy like Cam Heyward and Carl Dunbar as a defensive line coach. I mean, there's a lot of highs when it comes to Harmon's play. And considering, again, the interest is there, he's the only surefire first-round defensive lineman out of all the other defensive linemen that they brought in for top 30 visits. He's the only surefire first-rounder. And just his model, you know, how he plays on the field, I mean, it's just a match made in heaven once again.
Right. And yeah, he does only have 2 years of full season starting experience. In 2022, he did have, you know, sporadical starts and still got somewhere between 10, 11 pressures that season. Then originally starting his career at Michigan State, he finally got his starting gig with 10 games in 2023 before transferring to Oregon in his lone season. So yeah, he only does have 2 full seasons as a starter on that defensive line with Michigan State and last year with Oregon. But within those starts, and you see where he's progressed from year to year, and bringing him into a team with Cam Heyward leading the charge at defensive line with a coach like Carl Dunbar, who has developed a lot of good guys, a lot of good bodies for this line for so many years now. We're going on half a decade now, even more so. I think that'd be a perfect ad to keep mentoring someone that is so good in Derrick Harmon in the first round.
As a Woodman.
That's why you look at Derrick Harmon and you notice they're keeping their options on the table. They're not putting all their eggs in their basket for Derrick Harmon. They're not putting all their eggs in their basket for defensive linemen. That's why they didn't bring in Grant. That's why they didn't bring in Nolan. They brought in other potential first-round guys like a Nick Manwari, like a Shador Sanders, like a Jackson Dart, like a Matthew Golden, guys like that. They're keeping their options all over the table. But if you're thinking most realistic, if you're thinking probably the most likely to happen, and in our opinion, the most ideal, it would be Derrick Harmon. You know, I like a guy like Kenneth Grant, but clearly the interest just isn't there. And the Steelers, I can't tell you the last time they drafted somebody in the first round that wasn't a top 30 visit.
I couldn't tell you either.
They want that familiarity. They want, you know, they bring in these guys to see, you know, what's their mindset, you know, how they fit with this team, how they're going to grow with the organization. That's why they bring in these guys, and it's a make or break situation. Hence, look at what happened with Christian Gonzalez and Broderick Jones. We traded up for Broderick Jones when Christian Gonzalez was still on the board, and people were wondering, why do we take Christian Gonzalez over Broderick Jones? Well, according to Mike Tomlin, it wasn't really a good top 30 visit. It wasn't a good interview of sorts. So these things matter. So I would imagine bringing him in for a top 30 visit shows you their interest, and how can this guy not fit well in the black and gold? He fits like a glove here.
He does.
That's why I think, yeah, out of all the options, and they brought in a lot of first-round options, which means you should really keep everything on the table. You shouldn't really be focused on one sole guy. But, you know, you look at all the top 30 visits, all 30 that they've brought in the first round, you know, people, I think Derrick Harmon just makes the most sense this year.
Yeah, like you said, they have their options spread out. You know, they looked at a first-round quarterback. They've looked at a first-round running back. They've looked at a first-round wide receiver. They looked at a first-round safety. I mean, their options are literally all over the place, which is great, you know, as you should. Every NFL team should have all their options on the table. But considering what the Steelers' needs are, which is obviously defensive line, running back, and quarterback, again, we've been saying all offseason it's more ideal just look at defensive linemen just to add more youth to the defensive line, add more, you know, tenacity to the defensive line, get younger there, get more push there, more pass rush upside there. Just look for a ideal replacement for Cam Heyward down the road.
Yeah, you get a well-rounded football player like Derrick Harmon that can do everything on day one for your defensive line, which we need to really get back to fixing those trenches. And you notice Omar Khan and Andy Waddle, they're all about fixing the trenches. Omar Khan's first two drafts were 2 tackles in back-to-back classes.
And that appears to be the common trend. Will that continue to happen come Thursday night?
He almost has this Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman mindset. Let's build the trenches first. Let's just keep adding as many great bodies, as many great athletes as we can along those trenches, because without the trenches, you have nothing. You need those guys to protect the quarterback, and hopefully they turn out well, and you need somebody to stop the run. You need somebody to get to the quarterback. You need somebody to pair and then eventually replace Cam Heyward. I think the Steelers have a prime opportunity to do such a great thing in this draft class.
Just a matter if all the cards are on the table for them.
Let's hope Derrick Harmon falls to the pick at 21, and if he's there, I'd highly consider him being a selection. I don't know if they'll run to the podium if Harmon's on the board. I would personally, but you know, they're keeping all their options on the table. But I love Harmon in the first round for sure, man. I mean, if you're talking what are the more realistic or what are more my favorites or my preferred, it's Derrick Harmon right now, just based on their interest, just based on who could be available and what makes the most sense for the team right now as we head into the NFL draft, which is a week away, ladies and gentlemen. It is a week away. We will have one more mock out. You noticed that in our couple mocks we made throughout the offseason, every single first-round pick has been a defensive lineman. And spoiler alert, it'll be the same case in our last one. Wink, wink. Just keep in tune for that on Monday, guys.
Just a hint, yeah.
Our last mock will be released on Monday. Until then, man, you guys have a great weekend. You guys have a happy Easter if you guys are celebrating. Let us know you guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Would you guys select Derrick Harmon in the first round? And if not, who would you select? Would you trade back and still potentially get Derrick Harmon? I think that'd be great, but what do you guys think? Should we go after Harmon What are you guys' first round favorites? What are you guys' first round options? What are you guys' first round prefers for the Steelers in the first round, man? Let us know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. See you in the next one, and here we go, Steelers.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace!